Hi everyone, this is Anna Finch from Finch Press Publishing. I hope everyone's had a good day. Now today's video is a book review of The Woman in the Story. This is a non-fiction text. It basically goes over how to actually develop characters, particularly female protagonists. It gives you some strategies in order to how you can develop the characters, as well as how to develop a story through using a female protagonist. And it breaks down the different aspects of characters and things like that. So I bought this because it actually looked interesting, but by the time I got halfway through, I realized I wasn't not the book's intended audience. This is mainly for those doing screenwriting. So these are mainly for those who are doing screenwriting and are using a female protagonist on screen in either movie or TV. This is mainly for screenwriting or film texts. Now, that's not to say that you can't use the information in here to develop your own story, or to develop characters and things like that in a novel. You definitely can. It's just the actual text itself is mainly for those who write for screenwriting. Now, it goes over a couple of things, so particular things like types of female characters, things like role choices, heroine's journey, which is slightly different to the hero's journey. So this is a slightly different way of projecting a story, using a female perspective. So if you look at, it looks at role choice, where is it? So the heroine's journey, the actual structure is a little bit different to the hero's journey. So it goes over things like, because there's different stages in life for both male and female characters. This is based on typical stories. So typically female protagonists act or react in slightly different ways when compared to male protagonists in the same situation. Or rather, there's different concerns for female protagonists in a number of stories. That's not to say male characters can't react the same way as female characters. They definitely can. And female characters can react the same way as male characters. It's just that in some stories, or if you look at the character types itself, they may react a little bit differently than male characters. So based on this, the heroine's journey is more emotional. So it focuses on phases to do with identity, as well as like relating phases, momentum. So this is things like, transitioning from the normal world to the new world, which is the same in the hero's journey, and then going into different types of lessons and stages, which is interesting. So what the author explains, so Helen Jacey explains in this, is interesting, and it was different. I mean, because I had actually taught the hero's journey as a strategy for writing a short story for students. So I'm familiar with the hero's journey. I use that to write my novel Voiceless. So the heroine's journey, which is a little bit different, is interesting. So I found that pretty good. It has stuff to do with conflict, and particularly conflict involving female protagonists. So it's a bit interesting because it goes over different types of conflict. So things like conflict when in connection to gender, genre, culture, personal agency, and it goes over different layers of conflict. So there's some pretty good stuff in here. And when you go into in the section where there goes layers of conflict, it actually, I don't know if you can see it. It actually goes over some examples of the different types of conflicts that you can layer in your story and how it would be manifested in the actual story. So, for example, in internal conflict, the internal conflict could be shame or a sense of shame, and that could be manifested as fearing exposure. It could be manifested as addiction, avoiding intimacy, self-harming. Whereas internal conflict like low self-esteem can be manifested or shown through destructive relationships, unhealthy lifestyle, unhelpful decisions, eating disorders, self-harm. So the way it goes over the different types of conflict and specific feelings or internal conflicts that can arise, it actually says how it would be presented in a story. And if you know roughly what your character is feeling, but you don't know how you're going to show, for example, that the character feels shame as a result of some sort of violent act that happened towards them, if you have no idea how you could go about it, this actually goes into a bit of detail about that and about how to actually present internal conflict. Things like projection, denial, as repression, as internal conflict. So it goes over all that sort of stuff. It goes through other types of conflict, so to do with family, culture, so the more micro, also the more micro level conflicts before going into the more macro or larger conflicts to do with nation or world or so that sort of stuff, where it is external to the character, but it still affects them in some way. So that is actually pretty interesting. There's a couple of case studies. They actually look at the layers of conflict in Maleficent, the movie Maleficent, and it breaks down the different levels of conflict within one story, and it actually shows you how they use that particular aspect of conflict in order to build a story that people enjoy. So this is pretty good, and so there is quite a bit of stuff in here connected to character development and plot development when it comes to conflict. From this, personally, the aspects about the conflict, so the chapters about conflict and role choices, so conflict and role choices, as well as the going against the type, so having a female character that goes against the archetype or the stereotypes in particular situations. So those few chapters I found were the most interesting, the most engaging, and the most useful for me. Everything else, I read through it, I understood it, but it didn't really grab my attention because I wasn't the audience for this book. And those things apply more to screenwriting than novel writing. And I don't write scripts. I can, but I don't like to write scripts. At least this is me currently. I don't like to write scripts, mainly because it's all dialogue, and I prefer to write more without. So my novel has dialogue, and there is quite a bit of it, but the main focus is the internal thought process and their reactions to things that are happening around them, rather than back and forth dialogue throughout the whole thing. I enjoy watching plays and performances, but as a writer, I don't particularly enjoy writing scripts. So I'm not the intended audience for this. some of this can apply to my novel writing, and I found it pretty interesting. The conflict part I probably look at again, simply because if I get stuck on how I'm going to present a certain type of conflict, I can have a look, and there's some examples that I can use. But I'm not the intended audience. Okay, so overall, this book is pretty good. The writing is easy to understand. Everything's written clearly, to the point. The examples in the book are actually relevant to the section that is being talked about. The content is relevant mainly for screenwriters instead of novel writers, but there are bits in here that can apply. This focuses on female protagonists only. Okay. However, despite the fact that it focuses on female protagonists, a lot of the content applies to male protagonists as well, or even male antagonists or female antagonists. So just because it says the woman in the story, or female characters, doesn't mean the things in here only apply to female characters. They apply to any type of character. So there's that. So I would recommend this for screenwriters or people who are not used to writing female protagonists. So I generally write from the perspective of female protagonists in pretty much all my stories. So for me, something about writing male protagonists would probably be more suitable for me, because it's not generally how I write. So look, overall, I would recommend this for screenwriters, not for people who write novels. This can be helpful as a teaching reference or a text for teachers, for when they are teaching film text, in particular in like VCE, so senior level, or it can be helpful for teachers when they are planning lessons to do with character conflicts and the different levels of conflict and character development. So this can be useful as a teaching reference. As a writing reference for authors, I don't recommend it for novel writers. I'll probably give this a 3 out of 5. The book it's decent. The information in there is pretty good, but I'm not the intended audience, so I can't really give it anything higher. It doesn't really. There wasn't anything that really told me that it was only for film, or the focus was film. So yeah, I would probably give it a 3 out of 5. Anyway, so if you like this video, hit the like button or hit subscribe. I have a Facebook page as well. That the link for that is in my YouTube page. I will be posting on Facebook closer to the publication date for Voiceless, things like quote reveals from the novel, cover reveals. I'll most likely do it live on Facebook. I'm still in the planning stage for that. So a whole bunch of things and teasers will be put on my Facebook page for Voiceless, which I am planning on publishing in October this year. So there'll be more announcements later on when everything is all set up and ready to go. So you can go to my Facebook page and follow me on there, and you can leave a comment down below. I'm more than happy to reply to any comments that you leave. Alright, see ya.